Well, that was quite a surprise, and just one more thing that makes me, and I'm sure as my wife is, she was squeezing my hand as Pastor was sharing, fills our heart with many, many things. We get to go around and we try to share everything that is in our heart that's been there. And what we've experienced, though, it's an amazing thing, is that when we come back, we're much more filled than when we left. And each of you here have really filled our hearts is this real? I can drink this? We used to say that if it's still, put one iodine tablet, or two. If it's running, just use one, but I'll just trust that this is okay. We've been really blessed, not only by the personal acts of meeting you, the handshakes, the hugs, the welcome, but there's been some blessings that you may not even know. We've been able to stay at a beautiful place and wake up every morning to a beautiful view. We've had a car to use. And I've had to use my GPS, but on the way coming here this time, I was thinking, I've done this enough time now that I can probably make it, without even using the GPS. But then I remembered an incident that happened, and I want to share it with you because it really illustrates what my life has been like. There was a time that we were asked to speak at a small church in Altoona, PA, Pennsylvania. Now, we live up in western New York in the tundra area, the snow and everything. And so I had never even heard of Altoona, PA. But this was before they had GPSs. But they did have something called MapQuest, which nobody uses anymore, I don't think. But I did, because I didn't have any idea where Altoona, PA was. So I typed in and printed out a map of the route to go from Rochester, New York to Altoona, PA. It was pretty much just directly south and a little over to the right. And my wife and I started, and we got going. And after being married and being with each other, you get this communication that just kind of, you don't have to say words, but there's vibes that you pick up. And all of a sudden, she sensed something was the matter, and she said, "What's the matter?" I said, "Nothing, hon, nothing." And she said, "Do you have the directions?" And I said, No, I left them on the table. And she said, "Well, you better stop and ask for some directions, how to get there." And I said, "What? I'm a Green Beret. I don't need directions. I can find my way through the jungles. I can certainly find my way to Altoona, PA. I've got it in my mind. I got the vision. As I'm quickly shooting up a prayer, "Lord, be my vision, Get me to Altoona, PA, because I'll never be able to live it down." She didn't buy it, though. She couldn't buy into my vision. But I just kept on saying, "Trust me, hon, trust me, I'll get us there." Well, as it turned out, I knew it was south, and I knew which way was south, so I just started heading for the expressways and freeways and stuff. And eventually, God answered prayer, and I saw a sign that said, "Altoona, PA, this way." So I looked over, again, this nonverbal communication, but I just kind of gave her a smile. And she didn't respond in any way. She just went, And she said, "Do you know where the hotel is? We're supposed to be staying at the Marriott." And I said, "No, but Altoona, PA, how big can Altoona, PA be?" And she said, "Gary, please stop and ask for some directions." And I said, "Hon, I got it in here. I got the vision. Trust me, hon. I know where I'm going." Well, as we got closer to Altoona, PA, I saw a big sign. You know how they have them on the roadside, Marriott Hotel. And again, I looked at her, nonverbal communication, smiled. I didn't get any kind of a positive response back this time either. I could tell she still wasn't trusting me, still wasn't buying into my vision. So I pulled off to the exit that seemed closest to that sign, but as the furthest that I went on the exit, the sign kept going further and further away. And I could feel the vibes. "Gary, stop, ask for directions." Well, after going the wrong way on a one-way street, I finally decided I better stop and ask for some directions. So I stopped at this gas station and I said, "You see that sign?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Can you get me there?" And he said, "Sure. Do this, turn this way." So I get back in and I'm kind of humbled, but I'm still trying to, I put up the past successes. "Oh, I got us here, hon. I got us here," but still she wasn't buying it. So I made some right-hand turns, left-hand turns, and I could see the sign getting closer and closer. Pulled down the street, pulled into the parking lot where the sign was, pulled up to the sign and quietly put it into park, turned the car off, and I just sat there. And I was just waiting, because all this while we've been anticipating, it was about a 4 or 5 hour drive, and we were anticipating a nice relaxing time in the Marriott Hotel. Well, I'm just sitting there waiting, and she said, "Gary, you know what bothers me?" And I said, "What?" She said, "When you act like you know something when you really don't know." You see, what she was talking about was we were sitting there in front of the Marriott sign, but there was no hotel there. It was just a sign, the Marriott sign. The hotel had moved. It had gone somewhere else. Now, I said that's kind of like the story of my life. That's kind of like the way it's been. There's a verse in Proverbs that says, "There's a way that seems right unto a man, but the end is death." There's a way that seems right. You think you're going in the right direction. You got a plan. And you think that it's the right plan. You're going the right way. But then something happens and you go, "Wow, how'd I end up here? This is not part of my plan. This is not what I expected." Well, what I wanted to share my journey with you. But as I'm sharing my journey with you, give you some things that's helped me, encouragement, because you may find it helpful to you on your journey. Elizabeth Elliot, who was a Christian writer, she said something that really meant a lot to me. She said that on our journeys, it is God to whom and with whom we travel. It's God. That's where we're going. We're going to Him. No matter where else you're going, eventually we're going to God. It's to Him that we travel. But it's not only to Him, but it's with Him that we travel. And while He is the end of the journey, He's also with us at every stopping place. It's God to whom and with whom we travel. And He certainly is the end of the journey. And while He is with us at the end, He's also with us at every stopping place. On a journey, stopping places are great. Rest areas are great because it's a time you can kind of rest, regroup, check your bearings, make sure you're going in the right direction. And it's helpful, especially when you think you're going in the wrong direction or the right direction, but it's the wrong direction. And what I wanted to do today was to share with you my journey, but more importantly, some of the resting places where I kind of had to pull off on my journey. And it was at that time that God kind of had a conversation with me. He checked in with me. "Gary, I want you to check where you're going. You sure you're going in the right direction? Do you need anything from me now, Gary? Do you need some help? I'm here to help you, Gary." Hopefully, maybe as I share some of these stopping places that I had, maybe you might be able to identify with some of them and some of the ways in which God helped me at my stopping places. You see, I had a plan. Just like I thought I was going to be going to the Marriott Hotel, I thought that I had my plan figured out. I was a Green Beret. There was nothing more that I wanted in life than to be a Green Beret. I wanted to go to Vietnam, and I made it. I finished Special Forces training. I finished medical training. I ended up on an A team, 12 Americans. We were living in the jungles of Vietnam with a tribe called the Sedang Montagnards. Now, they were people who, in the jungles, they would run around with loincloths, hunt with crossbows. In many ways, their culture was what we might say is primitive. But in many more ways, they were so far advanced because they had known, they had learned what it meant to really live with one another. They understood what it was, the responsibilities, the duties that they had to one another so that they could live successfully in that setting. So I became the medic, and we lived at 2,300 mountain yards there. And it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. 24 years old, and I was in charge of the health of 12 Americans and 2,400 people. I was their only doctor. It was a tremendous responsibility. And not only that, I had achieved my success. I was living my dream. But not only that, I was living in a country that was beautiful. Vietnam is a beautiful, beautiful country. As I've driven around here and I've looked at the mountains and stuff, it reminds me of some of the highlands that we were in Vietnam. It's a beautiful, beautiful time. You know, people pay now $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 to go on vacations at Vietnam because it is a beautiful country. I was so blessed. I was getting paid $300 a month to be there. I didn't have to pay $7,000. The government paid me $300 a month, including combat pay. Aside from the snakes and the tigers and ambushes and firefights, it was a beautiful place to be, you know. But what bothered me was in our team house, we had a sign that said, "To really live, you must almost die. To those that fight for it, life has a meaning the protected will never know." When I read that, it was like, wow, I wonder what that means. Because I thought I was really living. I was living my dream. I couldn't have asked for a better way of living. But that sign struck me. To really live. Gary, you want to really live? You got to almost die, Gary. Because to those who fight for it, life has a meaning the protected will never know. Well, I kind of just put that aside, but that sign came back very, very strongly on April 1st, 1970. Our camp was surrounded by 10,000 of the enemy for 30 days. During that time, I was shot 3 different times. April 1st I wish it was a joke, on April Fool's Day, but it wasn't a joke, it was real. But the real shock came when I woke up and I was in a hospital bed. After having been shot 3 times. I remember waking up and having that same kind of experience saying, wow, how did I get here? This was not part of my plan. Remember, there's a way that seems right unto a man, but the end thereof is the way of death. I was lying in a hospital bed, dying, being shot in the spine, through the back, in the stomach. I was dying. I would not have been alive if it weren't for the blood flowing through the IV tubes into me, if it weren't for the oxygen going into my lungs. I had things that were outside that were supposed to be inside. They were outside, lying on my abdomen in a bag. There were so many things that were going on just to try to keep me alive. And then the real scare happened. People often ask me, and they want more detail about the battle, and I tell them the battle was a piece of cake. You know, being surrounded and all that, that was nothing compared to the battle that I was now going to fight. Because what happened was, after I took a look at myself and said, wow, how did I get here? The next thing that happened was that I started to go unconscious. And that was scary, closing your eyes. And as you close your eyes, you hear the men next to you groaning, crying. You hear the men next to you taking their last breath. You hear the men next to you say no more, and it's just silence as the nurse puts the sheet over their head. That was scary for me. Well, I came to, but then I found myself slipping away again. And there was a verse in Ecclesiastes that says that there is no man, no man has power over the spirit to retain the spirit. Neither has he power in the day of death. What I was experiencing on that day was I was experiencing my day of death. And Solomon had said, there's no man that has power to retain the spirit. You don't have power over your spirit, Gary. In your day of death, you are powerless. And he said that there's no discharge in that war. That's a battle that we're all going to have to fight. I was fighting that battle that day. It's what I called having my hand-to-hand combat with death. I had decided I didn't want to go unconscious anymore because I wanted to live. I didn't want to die. And so I took every weapon that Special Forces had instilled in me, every weapon that they had put into me to make me who I was. I took all those weapons and tried to battle death. And it was like death just laughed at me. I took my strength, I took my perseverance, I took my ability to endure hardship. And death just said, "Is that the best you got, Gary? It's nothing compared to the power that I have." And I would go unconscious. Well, I came to another time, and fortunately there was a chaplain that was there, and he was standing over me. And he said, "Son, I'm glad to see that you're awake." I said, "Sir, I'm very glad to be awake. Trust me." And he handed me a cross, and he said, "Would you like to pray?" I was 24 years old, and I had never even thought about prayer. I had never really thought about looking anywhere outside of myself for anything that I needed. Because up until that point, everything that I needed to be successful in life, everything I needed to in order to achieve what I wanted, came from in here. Now he's telling me, do I want to pray? In other words, do I want to look for something else outside of myself? I said, "I don't know how to pray, sir." And I said, "I don't even know who to pray to." He said, "That's okay, son. God knows how to listen." So after having all those weapons that I had be destroyed by death, after dying myself, things that I believed in, things that I trusted in, things that had brought me success, things that I had confidence in, after losing all those things, empty as I was, and I was empty, there was nothing that I believed in anymore. I couldn't even believe in myself anymore. I made a simple prayer at 24. I said, "God, if you're real, I need you." It was a simple prayer, but it came from a heart that was sincere, a heart that was genuine. There was no false bravado. There was no hypocrisy. There was nothing in my heart anymore. It was just a simple, honest prayer of somebody who had nothing left. And with nothing left, where do I turn? God, if you're real, I need you, because I can't do this alone. Well, something happened at that moment. I didn't automatically jump up and pull all the tubes out of myself and run around the ward going, "Yay, yay, yay, I'm all healed." That didn't happen. Something greater happened than that. Something happened in my heart. Something that has stayed with me since that day and will never, ever be able to be taken away from me. Because I sensed that there was something greater than death. There was something greater than me. There was something outside of me that was out here, but nevertheless was able to touch me here. And not only touch me, but change me. And not only change me, but change me because I felt that whatever it was, loved me. And that fear, that uncertainty, that doubt that I had, changed into a peace. It's what I say that when my courage failed, faith was born. Faith was born that day when I made that prayer. And as a result of the peace that came over me, I knew that there was a God, that there was something, and I had just prayed to God, so I gave him the name God, that there was some God that was real. And more importantly, was able to touch me and love me. So I knew that there was a God, but I came to understand that knowing that there's a God is not the same as knowing God. There's many of us that have been in combat. They say there's no atheists in the foxhole. When you're being shot at and stuff, a lot of guys, a lot of people, and a lot of experiences that we all have, we kind of look for something bigger than us, some higher power or something. But knowing that there's a higher power, knowing that there's God, is not the same as knowing him. And that's what he wants. He touched me because he wanted me to know him. And I said, okay, I'm going to get to know him. So I began a journey of trying to understand who this God was. And that journey led me through some real bad experiences. Coming home, my welcome home was not the best. Not only was I changed by the battle and by what war does, but I was changed because of the reception that many of us from Vietnam received. You see, war challenges everything that you believe. It challenges everything that you believe about yourself. It challenges how you see yourself. You find yourself doing some things, thinking some things, feeling some things that you never thought you could have felt. But they're there, and they've become a part of you. And it changes you. I came home changed. On the college campuses, I received not a welcome home, but do you like killing babies? Baby killer. Spit on. Those kinds of things didn't help me. Those kinds of things were worse than the wounds that I'd received in Vietnam. I say that the wounds in Vietnam hurt me physically, but the wounds that I received in my homecoming destroyed me. Whatever was left, that almost dying in the hospital bed didn't kill, my homecoming did. Fortunately, though, I was still searching for that God that I knew was real, so I quit college and I headed to New England. I was down there looking for a friend. I found one because I knew that he had a faith. And he listened to me, he talked to me, he seemed to understand, even though I couldn't share things that were inside of me, he sensed that I was sincere in seeking God. So he asked me to do him a favor. He asked me to read this book. So he gave me a book. I started reading it. It was a New Testament. I got through Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. By the time I got to John, I began to realize something. Another one of those miracles happened like happened to me in the hospital bed. You see, because in John 14, it starts out by saying, "Let not your heart be troubled." And my heart had been troubled. It said, "Let not your heart be troubled, Gary. You believe in God?" I said, "Yes, I believe in God. I met him in the hospital bed. I know he's real." They said, "Believe also in me. I am the way, the truth, and the life." This was Jesus speaking. And as I read some of those words, the Spirit of God, the same Spirit that touched me in that hospital bed, began to touch my heart again and open my heart and open my eyes so that I was able to see that this person that I was reading about, that this book was about, was the God that I had met. So on July 2nd, 1972, at 3 o'clock in the morning, after reading and after having my heart opened, I realized Jesus was the Son of God and that his death was my salvation. I accepted Christ as my Savior. I had found God, but my journey wasn't over. Now, that hospital bed and that everything leading up to reading the Bible was like a stopping place for me. It was a stopping place where God and I had some interaction when I reached out to him. And one of the things that I learned from that stopping place is that in life, there's a lot of things that are going to happen to you. But in life, what happens in you is more important than what happens to you. What happens in you in life is much more important than what happens to you. I had experienced some terrible things. But what was going on inside of me was much more important than what happened to me. What was going on inside of me was that I was losing confidence in myself. I was learning that to really live, I must almost die. That's an important thing to realize on our journey. As we go through life, there are going to be some terrible, terrible things that we don't understand. But I think God has these resting places where if you stop and you ask him, God, what's going on? Gary, I know it's tough, but I want you to realize something. Right now, what happens in you is more important than what's happening to you. Because what's happening in you is you're realizing you can't trust yourself. What's happening in you is realizing that you need me, that you need something outside of yourself. And that's an important thing to realize on our journey. What happens in us is more important than what happens to us. Well, after I became a Christian, something happened to me, obviously. You see, because prior to that, because of all the hurt that I had, and because of all the pain that I was feeling, I thought that if I could just forget about Vietnam, that I'd get better. That forgetting was getting better. But it was difficult to forget. It was difficult because I found out that just forgetting about the experiences didn't deal with the anger and the rage and the hurt that I felt. It didn't help the guilt that was still devastating me and tearing me apart. I didn't turn to drugs or alcohol, but I thought that there's something that I can do that will be even better. Better than drugs, better than alcohol. It'll work 100%. What I did was I looked inside for the switch that's inside of me, and I just flicked it off. I quit caring about things. I didn't value anything anymore. Most of everything had been killed in Vietnam anyhow. I died in that Vietnam, so it was easy for me to just flick the switch. The best way to deal with the hurt, forget about it. The best way to forget about it is flick off the switch, turn it to off. Don't care about anything. And so that's how I was when I went and talked to the guy who shared Christ with me. I didn't really care about anything. But as I read through the Word, it was the Holy Spirit that was turning that switch on again. Jesus clicked that switch on. Said, Gary, I want you to experience my love. So the switch was turned on, but I still had the anger. I still had hate. I felt God's love for me, but I didn't feel any love for myself. I didn't know how to love others. I didn't know what to do with that love. I didn't know how to live. All I knew was that to really live, I don't die. I'm dying. But he said, to those who fight for it, life has a meaning the protected will never know. So what I chose to do was I wanted to understand what that meant to really live. I wanted to really live again. I felt this new love, but I didn't know how to do it. So I said, I know what I'll do is I'm going to take this Bible and I'm going to go up into the woods of northern New Hampshire and I'm going to find a cave. I'm going to live in a cave, and I lived there for 2 years. In this cave, studying about the God that I had just met personally, reading of the words of Jesus, reading about what it meant to have him in my life now. The ironic part, and this was another stopping place for me, a resting place. It was a place where God and I interacted with one another. I was trying to get my bearings. God, I'm just going to pull off into this rest area. I'm going to find this cave. I'm going to stay there. And I'm going to think about, to really live, you must almost die. I'm going to think about, to those who fight for it, life has a meaning the protected will never know. I'm going to try to live, God, and I want you to help me. I want to know what life's about. The irony of my story is that it was at the time living in the cave that God gave me the Medal of Honor. Now I'm trying to forget about Vietnam, and I find out that I'm being awarded the Medal of Honor. Now something else was added to the mix, added to what I didn't understand. What does this mean? Why me? More guilt. So I really began to fight to really live. To those that fight for it, life has a meaning the protected will never know. Back then, they didn't know about PTSD, but I was experiencing the trauma of war. They talk about resiliency now. They talk about bouncing back. I didn't have anything to bounce back. Everything had been destroyed in Vietnam. But what happened in that cave, for me, was just that I took what God had said and I rebuilt my life. I went into that cave not valuing anything. I went into that cave not being able to feel anything, not wanting to feel. But as I read and prayed, God began to show me, God began to rebuild in me a life. He helped me be able to value things. He helped me to find a place to value myself and to value others. But that cave was a strong refuge. What made that cave strong and what kept me in that cave was fear. A fear of coming out and letting people see what I had become. If people could see me as I saw myself, they'd reject me again, because that's what happened on the college campus. That fear kept me in that cave. One of my students at one time said, "Why'd you come out of the cave ever?" I came out of the cave because I found someone who was willing to come into the cave. You know, we all have caves that we go to when we hurt, when we have questions, when we just don't know what's happening. When we try to retreat into a safe spot, thinking that maybe if I can just forget and hide. But that's not getting better. Forgetting's not getting better. Getting better is finding someone who will come into that cave with you, who will listen, who will love you, who will be faithfully with you at all times, who will look at those worst parts of yourself and still love you. Why did I come out of the cave? Because I found someone who loved me. In this town of Lancaster, which was near the cave where I was, I found a young lady who was very beautiful, fell in love with her, asked her to marry me. And she said, "Okay, but you got to come out of the cave." I came out of the cave, and we've been married for 44 years. But I came out because it was her love that opened my heart, that touched me, that enabled me to feel safe. It was the same kind of love that I felt when God opened my heart. See, eventually God gave me this message. He said, "Gary, you got to come out of the cave now. I want you to come out of the cave because there's a message that's in your heart. I've given you the Medal of Honor. I've helped you to try to understand what it means to really live. You've got a message, Gary. Come out and share that message. I've given you a partner to share that message with. Come out." So after 2 years, I did come out. And I came out with a message, which is that message is what's brought me here. And that message that I had was, I learned first of all that this Medal of Honor is not about me. It's not about what I did. This Medal of Honor is about others. It's about the sacrifice that every man and woman makes. It's about their love for others. This medal is about sharing a message that there's a different way to live your life, loving and caring about others. This message is not about me. It's about God. It's not about what I did, but it's about what He did. Without His grace, I wouldn't have survived Vietnam. Without His love and His forgiveness, I would not be able to come outside of the cave. I would not be able to risk letting someone into my life because of the fear that if they saw me, they would hate me. That's the fear that keeps people locked up. That's the fear that keeps people building walls, that keeps people from not loving one another. But God gave me a message that the way to come out of that cave is love. Finding someone that will love you. And so we shared that message. I spent 33 years working with middle school kids, trying to share that message about a different way to live your life, about caring for others. In that cave and over the years, I've learned a lot about life. I've learned about life lessons. And as Pastor mentioned, one of the life lessons that I did learn that meant a lot to me was that in life there's a big difference between success and significance. In life there's a big difference between success and significance. Success is very important. I've had a lot of successes in my life. But along with success sometimes comes disappointments. And disappointments impact your life in a tremendous way. You become very discouraged. You become bummed. And there was an experience that we had that became another stopping place. 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with colon cancer, stage 3 colon cancer. It was another stopping place. That stopping place provided me an opportunity to look back on my life because I thought I was going to die again. And I started to look back on my life and I was thinking, what's my life been? Was I thinking about the successes? I didn't think about the success at that time. I was looking for something more than just success. You see, because the greatest disappointment in life is not never achieving a success, but finally achieving what it is that you're going after and then realizing that it's not enough, that it didn't hold what you thought it was going to. That's the biggest disappointment. That goes hand in hand sometimes with success. And once that happens, all we're left with are just questions of, is this what life is really all about? When I was going through stage 3 cancer again, that's all that I was thinking about. Looking back on my life, did it matter? Is this all there is? What's going to give me the comfort and peace that I need? This was another stopping place where I had to really wrestle with God. And God pointed out to me that, Gary, there's a difference between success and significance. You see, I learned that no matter how much wealth, no matter how big your bank account is, no matter how big your house is or what kind of car you're going to drive, there's going to come a time in your life when you look back and you say, is this what it's all about? Is this what really matters? That challenge showed me that there was something more important than success, and that was significance. And for me, what significance means is that God has a plan. I realized that through the challenge of this cancer, as through the challenge of many of the challenges that I went through, those challenges in life challenged who I am and what I believed. But more importantly, they challenged and gave me an opportunity to see who God was and how God was a part of my life. You see, that's what significance is. Significance for me is knowing that God has a unique plan for your life. Significance for me was knowing that no matter where I was, no matter when I was there, no matter what I was going through, that it was part of his plan. Sure, some of those challenges were really, really difficult. But what they did was that they showed me that what happened in me was more important than what was happening to me. Because what was happening in me was I realized that I needed something more than myself. Significance is much more important than success. Success is knowing that what you're going through is part of his plan. Success and significance in life. I mean, significance is letting your story become his story. You know what the difference between success and significance in life is? I found out that for me, success was finding the Marriott sign. Significance is finding the hotel. In life, there is a big difference between success and significance. But in this life, it's God to whom and with whom we're going to travel. And while he is the end of the journey, he is with us at every stopping place. And I don't know where you are on your journey, but I do know that when that journey ends, we're going to be face to face with God. It's my prayer that you're ready to meet God. I do know that on this journey, he walks with us every day, every step of the way. I know that he is the God who's there. I do know that God is at every stopping place. He's there to encourage, to comfort, to heal, to help. Whether you're fighting the trauma of war, whether you're fighting a difficult relationship, difficulties in marriage, difficulties with your kids, that journey is hard. But God provides stopping places where he says, pull off for a moment. Let's talk. Do you need something? I'm here. You know, I don't know where you are in your journey, but maybe this is a stopping place. Maybe you're one of those people like I was that Proverbs 14, you're on your way. You think you're going in the right direction, but the end is death. Or maybe you're here today and you've been on your journey and it's been a hard one. It's been tough. Maybe you're thinking about pulling into your cave. Maybe you're thinking about pulling back and just wanting to find a safe place to hide, to try to forget. Or maybe you've been a person who's followed God for 10, 15, 20 years. You've had a great relationship. No matter where you are in those three areas, I do know also that God wants us to know something. He wants us to know that no matter what we're going through, he's there. No matter how well you think you know him, no matter how well you no matter how well or how much you hurt, he wants you to know that he's there. And all that you need is only really a simple prayer away. That was the message that brought my wife and I together, brought us here. It brought me out of the cave to be able to share that there is a different way to live your life. Loving others, loving God, to live a life of significance, and to realize that significance in life comes when you become part of God's plan, when you walk with God, loving him, loving others. Again, I want to thank you for the welcome, the love, the time that we've spent together. It means a lot. We will take much more with us back to the mainland than we gave here today.